Likkutei Torah Bamidbar Shavuot Maamar, page Yud Gimel 25, first column Eis Beis. Okay, until now the Alter Rebbe is explaining that the concept of Nasav and Ishma was bringing the highest levels of Elokus down here into the physical world, and he says when is the great ultimate greatness of Hashem is dafka when he comes into this world. And he said the two definitions, the Bereshis, Bekadmin, or Bechochmas, or whatever. So he says, so bottom line is that through Torah, Hashem takes this infinite greatness of his, and he puts himself into a finite sefer that deals with gashmiistic, physical things, agriculture, all those things. In order to have the symptom, that Hashem's infinite greatness should come into speech, which is called Gedulah, which is a tremendous descent. Like you said, you're going from the super infinite to the super finite. In the place of Hashem's greatness. There you see his humility, Pirush. There's no greater modesty than there's no greater modesty from Hashem that the infinite comes into the level of speech. In other words, like this: for Hashem in the infinite to come into a low finite level of speech, which one speech, like you said before, could be Yud Ke Hashem Tzurei Lomim. Yud, he created Olam Haba. Hey, he created Olam Hazeh. So the whole Olam Hazeh is one letter. So you can imagine, like we said, compared to the power of speech, power of meat, the power of all that. So for Hashem to want to come down from the essence of Hashem into one little word is a tremendous symptom and anova. So how does that happen? What makes Hashem come down into this world? So he says, in Torah mitzvahs, that's through Torah mitzvahs. The Medrash says in the pasuk, and Rashi brings it down. Bereshis Badam. It says Bereshis Badam. So the Medrash says, Beis Reshis, for the two things that are called Reshis, Bara Lakim Es Hashemayim V'Aretz. What are the two things? The Rashi calls the Medrash, the beginning of Chumash. Torah is called Reshis, and Jews are called Reshis. Meaning, why Bara Lakim? Why did Hashem come down into the slow speech, so to speak, for Jews to do Torah? Shenik V'Gam Maamar Sifri Harzinu. One of the three kinyanim Hashem acquired in this world says Torah kinyan echad. Hashem acquired Torah, meaning kinyan made al davar sheyaka b'yesed. Why do you buy something or acquire something? Because by you it's precious. If not, you wouldn't buy it. You wouldn't get it. So when the Medrash says in Pirkei Avos it says chamisha kinyanim, okay, but here he calls the Medrash in Sifri that Hashem acquired Torah. That means Torah is very precious to him, that he wants it. What's interesting though, Hashem is the author, so why does he have to acquire it? It's automatically his, because he wrote the book. But that's a separate issue. Concerning mitzvahs, the Zohar says, that 248 positive mitzvahs and Ramachiv the Malka correspond with the 248 limbs of Hashem. What does that mean? What's the connection between limbs of Hashem and mitzvahs? Hashem doesn't have physical limbs, obviously. He says, Pirush, Kamei, Derech Moshe, just like in the Gash mystical world. Ever, Shul Basar, Vegidim, Vatzam. What's a limb? Halachically, a limb, by the way, is only if it has a bone, and meat and veins. If it doesn't have a bone, halachically it's not a limb. Shem Chinas Keli V'Ha'ad V'Achayis, which is a Keli, And then the power of the neshama comes into this particular limb. And generally speaking, it's called Eved, a limb. So in other words, what is the eye? The eye is a limb. What is the limb? That's where the power of the neshama's sight goes into. It's a keli for it. The same kelim is barich. The same thing. What does it mean? The mitzvahs are limbs of Hashem. The mitzvahs are kelim. Shebahem bal yodim is pashit erd v'chayis rotzen el yin's barich. Just like by the neshama, a limb means it's a keli that Elokus comes into. That the neshama comes into. So what is a limb in mitzvahs? The mitzvah is a vessel that Elokus can reveal itself in. And just like by a person's limbs, every limb has a different function. That's why we have 248 limbs, because each limb has a function that the other one doesn't have. So each mitzvah has a unique function that no other mitzvah has. Today we don't have most of the 248 positive mitzvahs. A lot of them have to do with the Beis Hamikdash and the laws of purity and impurity that we don't have today, because today we don't need those hashpos. They're done already from before. So he says that's misev and kolam, that from the infinite level of Hashem to come into mamali kolam in gili v'tachteinu al derech yizbar, like it's explained in liyiras Hashem, to fear Hashem, meaning aidei Yisrael eisei ha-mitzvah, by Yidden who do the mitzvah. Asher kitshanu b'mitzvah. So then we bring, so what's out the Rebbe saying? Torah and mitzvahs is what brings down the infinite Elokus to want to come into a finite, limited, one-word world. So now the Rebbe continues and says, what's the difference between Torah and mitzvahs? Mitzvahs are called limbs. So what's Torah? Torah is the blood. It's the blood which is called the nefesh. What brings the power of the neshama into the eye, or into the mouth, or into the hand? It's the blood. It's the blood that brings the chayis of the neshama into different limbs of the body. In other words, the power of sight that the neshama has, how does it get to the eye? It gets to the eye through the blood. So Torah is the blood, and the mitzvahs are the limb. But in order for the nefesh to come into the limbs, it needs the blood. In order for Hashem to come into the limbs of the world through mitzvahs, he needs Torah, which is the blood that brings it. And it's the source of the life of the nefesh in the limbs. So it is in Torah. Torah gives life. What gives life to mitzvahs? You do a mitzvah, what gives life to the mitzvah? That's understanding the kavanah of the mitzvah, understanding the purpose of the mitzvah. That's Torah. You have the actual action of the mitzvah, yeah? But where do you get the intent, or how to do it, or what to do it? That's all from Torah. Correct. But there has to be the hamshach of Elokus into world, like the hamshach of the nefesh into the limbs. That's where Torah comes into the picture. And that's why he says, Zay Torah Adam. Yeah? So what is Adam? Aleph Dam. Aleph Dam is Adam. Derech Mashal. Shehein Perush, Mitzvah Prati Ocheseyim. The blood is the explanation of the mitzvahs and the details. How to do the mitzvah properly. So therefore, Zay Torah Adam, and you could say Aleph to Hashem to bring it into the Dam. That's the concept of Torah, is to bring the power of the neshama into the mitzvah is through the dam. And now we'll understand. Maamar, as what the Gemara says, it says in the pasuk, Zeis Torah Sa'ila. This is the laws of the Oila. So the Gemara says on it, Kol ha'esik b'Torah Sa'ila, kilu ikirved, shenema Zeis Torah Loila. So the Torah says, when you learn the laws of carbon Oila, then you have the carbon Oila. Or it says, Va'omer ha'pasik, B'chol makom mukta mugish l'shmi, where it's like Torah and brought to my name, Umincha Eila Talmidei Chachamim. So he says, if that's the case, why is Torah greater than mitzvahs? If Torah is only to bring the blood that brings the power of sight to the eye, but l'chayra, the power of sight is the ultimate kavanah. So why is the mitzvah, the keli, greater, not as great as the blood that brings it to the keli?
You're talking about down here.
Down here. Elo, bisman shebeis hamikdash yikayim davka b'mokim mizbeach. Okay, in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, you couldn't bring a carbon learning about the carbon oila. Somebody had an obligation to bring a carbon. They couldn't fulfill their obligation by sitting and learning the laws of the carbon. You had to pick yourself up, take an animal, go to the Beis Hamikdash and bring it. In other words, like this. Now the Rabbi says it here, but the Rabbi used to elaborate on the salat. The Gemara says, whoever learns the laws of Oila, like you bring an Oila. Now, in a certain way, that's even greater than the carbon Oila itself. Why? If you wanted to bring a carbon Oila, you had to be in Yerushalayim in the Beis Hamikdash. You couldn't bring a carbon at night. You couldn't bring a carbon if you were tummy. There were a lot of restrictions on physically when you had to bring a carbon. Yeah. Now the Gemara says, whoever learns the laws of Oila is like brought a carbon Oila. That means you can lay in bed at night. You could be impure. You could be in China. And you're laying in bed and learning the laws of the Oila, it's like you brought the carbon Oila. But that's only after the Churban Beis Hamikdash. And during the time of the Beis Hamikdash, you couldn't do that. So he says, V'chein b'shari mitzvahs ha'Torah. Same thing with all the other mitzvahs ha'Torah. Yesh mehem shutluim b'zman. There are certain mitzvahs that are connected to time, like Shabbat, Shofar, Sukkah, Lulav, Einergen, Ela Bizman, Avar Shalei Bizmanom. But if it's not Pesach and you're eating matzah, you don't get a mitzvah. Now that if you made a bracha, you get an aveda. He says, "Masha'en kin Talmidei Talmud Torah, shum mitzvah b'chol zman la'aseh b'divrei Torah, afilu b'elchos Shabbos u'Sukkah." So it comes out like this. If I learn the laws of matzah today, it's like I ate matzah. You're not fulfilling your obligation, but conceptually, learning about matzah is like you ate matzah. Just like learning about a carbon is considered like you brought the carbon. So learning about matzah at any time of the day or night, or any time of the year, it's like you brought matzah. What? Like you ate matzah, but buying matzah. Buying matzah is not a mitzvah. It's emptying the wallet.
But if there's matzah to eat, so reading about it shouldn't fulfill the mitzvah.
Why not? No, not on Pesach when you have to eat matzah. I'm saying when you learn Torah, you have matzah right in front of you. It's Shavuot, okay? You have matzah right in front of you. So you can't eat the matzah to get a mitzvah. Right? But if you learn the din of matzah, then it's like you ate matzah. What?
Same about giving of tzedakah?
No, over there you got to give it. Sometimes you could give tzedakah to yourself, not money. You do Mibsarach al tesalim. It says by tzedakah, you shouldn't conceal yourself from your own flesh and blood. If you do a mitzvah, you're doing tzedakah to yourself. You learn Torah, you're doing tzedakah to yourself. But you can't put money from one pocket to the next and say that's, I'm giving tzedakah.
Sometimes you give $1 and they throw it back to your face.
Okay?
But rather, you can't learn Hilchos Tefillin and not put on tefillin.
I understand. That's because there's nothing to do with the learning of tefillin. You have a mitzvah to put on tefillin. That mitzvah of putting on tefillin, you can't get fulfilled by learning tefillin. But if you don't have a mitzvah now of putting on tefillin, I did it already today, or it's at night, or Shabbos, or Yom Tov, whatever, and I learned the laws of tefillin, it's considered as if I did the concept of tefillin.
God forbid, somebody...
Because, by the way, so why do we daven that we should get korbanos back? Because the advantage is when Torah mitzvahs are done dafkin gashmis. That's where mitzvahs come in versus Torah. Torah, you learn about korbanos. Yeah, you bring down in ruchnias the inyan of a korban. But physically, you didn't bring a korban. Like I said, if you have a physical obligation to bring a korban, it doesn't help learning the dinim. Not only that, people that sin now once a year by accident, and you have to bring a korban chatas. Yeah. Mashiach's coming, we're going to have to line up around the world 80 million times and line up to bring korbanos. All the korbanos that we sin now, we have to bring when Mashiach comes. That's what I'm saying. It's not going to help the chiyuv that you have when the Beis Hamikdash comes. The physical mitzvah.
Let's say I take an overseas flight and by accident I checked through my tefillin and I have no access to the tefillin. If I sit down and learn laws of tefillin...
No, doesn't do anything.
Why? The Jews of Russia, they didn't have tefillin.
You don't have to...
That's Rashbi and the Maida. Since when are you Rashbi and the Maida?
He doesn't have tefillin. He's in
I
the
don't have
island.
tefillin.
That was negligence on his part.
Okay, yeah.
So what do you mean, okay?
It was negligence.
So Rashbi wasn't negligence. The Jews in Russia weren't negligence.
The flight is going to be over. There is no tefillin.
No.
So I don't...
The Gemara says, the Pasuk says, the Gemara quotes the Pasuk. A guy didn't read Shema one day. There's a Pasuk that Maamar says, is in a crookedness that you can never fix. Because even though you'll start putting on tefillin every day from now on, today's tefillin you missed.
I understand. But by the same... I don't want to compare it. Lahabi. Just like you don't have the korbanot now.
No.
And he's studying the laws of korbanot.
That we don't have kabbanis now is Hashem's fault.
Same thing with my tefillin.
No, that was your fault.
Why is it that when the Shama Parim saying, how come...
The what?
When the Shama Parim saying, how come that formula actually works?
What?
When the Shama Parim saying...
And that's because we have no other choice.
I know, but why does it cloud up? How could the words...
Because that's what Hashem said. Kol alayim teiras eila kila kirveila. Hashem said, because Torah is so powerful, Torah brings down those inyonim. Rashbi was terasiyim nasei. Okay? How did Rashbi bring down the kedusha of a mitzvah? So Rashbi, his avoid of learning Torah brought down the mitzvah into physical. Remember we learned it, Alter Rebbe says in the Shvi Shel Pesach Maimorim, there's nuna yama, there's fish in the sea, there's a shorabar, there's a yasan, there's certain tzaddikim that accomplished these gashmiistic things through ruchni, but those are super great neshamas.
Is there a nimshal?
Not every Tom, Dick, and Harry. What?
Is there a nimshal for that in anything else in life?
No.
That learning about something that's like you did.
Yeah, what do you need a mud? That's the muscle.
Only
The
to
nimsh-
Only to
Yeah.
What is saying?
What?
What are they saying? That there is no korbanot, you say korbanot is equal to.
Yeah. Not say korban, learn korbanos.
Yeah.
Right. But now when you have the chiyuv to do it. When you have, because now you have to do the physical obligation. Learning about tefillin and not putting it on is not going to do you any good. In a time when there's no korbanos, then it helps. The Kedusha brought down into the world through mitzvahs in the tangible level is much more than it is through Torah. Torah brings it down from there, up there, down here, but in the spiritual realm.
The situation changes for people who've been incarcerated in jail or they didn't have access to something.
But that you could also blame them. If they did illegal things that got them in jail, so therefore it's their fault that they don't have tefillin. We're talking about when the Russians put the Jew into prison. He didn't do anything wrong. You forget, he was spreading Yiddishkeit. He was learning Torah. And they threw him into prison. Yeah? Not his fault at all. Okay. Now, he's in prison that came from the Eibishter. Hashem put him into prison. So now the Rabbi explains, l'chayra, he can't put on tefillin. So what does Hashem want from him?
Right?
What Hashem wants is to see that it bothers you that you can't put on tefillin. To give you an example, we mentioned, there's a thing called Kiddush Levana. Yeah? Okay, so Baruch Hashem in LA, it's not that hard. Okay? But go into the Russian winters, okay, where it was cloudy and thick clouds and snow and the whole thing, yeah? Sometimes it was almost impossible to do Kiddush Levana. Now, whose fault is that?
They didn't have helicopters.
They didn't have helicopters. Okay, whose fault was that? It's not the Jew's fault. Okay. So a normal guy will come along and say, okay, listen, it's God's problem. He didn't make a Levana. Right? But then you have a guy like Rabbi Likkutei that wrote a pidyon into the Tzemach Tzedek, and he said, if you don't produce a Levana somehow, I will not be able to handle living. He said, I'm going to die. He wrote a pidyon into the Tzemach Tzedek. In other words, by Rabbi Likkutei, if he wasn't able to do, which is not a biblical mitzvah, by the way, right? He wasn't able to do Kiddush Levana, he would have died from the pain. That's what Hashem wants. Not that we say, oh, great, there's no Levana, okay. Save 10 minutes Saturday night. I can go to the movies 10 minutes earlier. You know what I mean? That's the difference. So Chassidus explains that if Hashem puts a person in a situation, not that the person did it. Okay, I stole or whatever, I was corrupt, I ended up in jail. Yeah, that's my fault. See, now I can't put on tefillin, I can't do mitzvahs. You can't blame Hashem, because you put yourself in that situation. But when Hashem puts a person in a situation that it's impossible for him to do a mitzvah, why did Hashem put it? Why does Hashem want from him? No, not tshuva. Hashem wants him to be upset that he can't do the mitzvah. Not saying upset, okay, goodbye. Like the Kabbalah Pali, that you're going to die from it. It's a very important aspect, by the way. Sometimes Hashem puts a person in a situation that he cannot do a mitzvah. For instance, God forbid, somebody has a heart attack, yeah, and he's out of commission for a few days. But you can't put on tefillin. Right? It's not his fault. That's the situation Hashem put him into. Okay? So then Hashem doesn't want the mitzvah. When Hashem puts you in that situation, it means Hashem doesn't want you to do the mitzvah. What does he want you to do? To die from pain from it.
That's very dangerous. I could say, if I can't do a mitzvah, I could say, you know what? Hashem didn't want me to do this mitzvah.
No, I said you don't want to do the mitzvah. Not Hashem.
I could make that alibi for myself.
Yeah, but it doesn't work. It's stupid. Today, everything moods. I'm not in the mood. I am in the mood, So the guy says, I'm not in the mood of putting on tefillin, so therefore Hashem doesn't want me to put on tefillin.
Right?
Well, it's ridiculous.
I just wanted it to go on.
No, but it's a stupid statement. When Hashem puts somebody in this situation, it's a different story.
That's the definition of Yitzhak. The person doesn't want to do a mitzvah.
Yeah, he doesn't want to do a mitzvah. That's all the Yitzhak. So he says, so yes, how could the blood, Torah, which is the blood that carries the l'chayis into the limb, how could that be greater than the actual thing? He said, he says, what's unique about blood? It's the same blood in every part of the body. The blood that brings the power of the neshama into different parts of the body, is all the same blood. Masha'enkin ha-mitzvahs which evarim de malka derech mashal yesh b'hem ischalkus eisus man. See, the Alter Rebbe says like this. Why is it that Torah doesn't matter in time and place? I can learn about a korban olah at night in Chutz La'aretz, and mitzvahs have to be done in a particular time. So the Alter Rebbe explains why. Because blood is equal in all places. The limb is not equal in all places. So therefore, Torah, which is blood, can be learned anytime. And the mitzvah, which is the limb, that it's only the eye sees and the eye doesn't smell. Torah is klal, basically. Well, so it says there's a time and place for all desires, meaning Shamitz is afal pishain. Okay, again.